Hey, it's Paul Salazar over at Hilton Hyland Real Estate Beverly Hills. If you're a seller out there and you're wondering what it's like to work with me or my team, then this video is for you. We're going to be interviewing one of our clients, Helen. We sold her property recently, and we're going to be discussing how we prepped her house, how we marketed her house, how we helped her pick the right buyer, how we negotiated the best price for her house, how we negotiated the inspection process, and ultimately how we closed the deal. Enjoy the video and the interview. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to leave a comment down below and hit the subscribe button and like button if you want more videos like this. If you're watching this video and you want to know what it is working with me as a listing agent, right, representing a seller, for you, Helen, we did a kind of like a soft remodel for your house, right? It was your first home in LA. So it was your first sale. You didn't actually know what to expect, right? And so tell us about what that process looked like for you and working for me and the team.
So first of all, I should say that my personal aesthetic is very different from what is saleable.
Yeah.
So I had to completely trust you as to what other buyers were going to want. So some things I thought, well, I don't really like this big dramatic faucet. But I realized once it was photographed that it made sense.
Yeah.
And so that was something that was so different.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this was my house I bought when I was single.
Yes.
And then we had 2 children in the midst of COVID. So our house was really crammed of stuff, but that was not our natural thing.
Yeah.
But even our furniture choices, there was no way that it could be used to look good for staging.
Yeah.
And so we also trusted you for the stager, and also the neighborhood of West Hollywood was quickly changing. And so that's a question for you is, how did you sort of get a sense of what the buyer could be to tailor the flipping, not the flipping, but the staging and the soft remodel process?
Sure. So again, LA is huge, right? And I serve a lot of different markets, right? I know the West Hollywood market pretty good, but an easy way to do this is just look at the certain price range that we're gonna sell your house.
Right.
And look at the houses that have been redone and seeing what houses have gotten the top, like the highest price, and kind of just emulating that, right?
That makes
so
sense,
it's not a hard process, right? So what we did with your house is that, well, first off, you trusted me in the process, which is obviously a key component, right? Is to allow that trust in the other person, because you're spending a lot of money in redoing this house. But every dollar you spent, you probably got $5 back, right? So we have a great handyman contractor ever, who's been an asset to my team. And I brought him along, and me and you and him, we walked through the house, and you trusted me because, again, this is not your aesthetic, right? You have a different aesthetic, but you trusted me in knowing that in order to get top dollar for this house, we have to make it as neutral as possible.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So we did the kitchen countertops. We painted the interior. You had a great gate that you use as more like a playground, but we covered the gate with wood slats and put some big, like address numbers on there. We took out, I think,
which made the back thing completely private. Yeah,
exactly.
That was very clever.
Yeah, we painted the back deck white to make it look more like a Palm Springs vibe. We cleaned up the backyard, added, I think, bark in the backyard instead of putting grass or something like that. That's a lot more expensive. I remember that in the back there was a tree that maybe had fallen down or something, but it was not private. So we added some trees to create privacy in the backyard. And then ultimately the most important part was the staging and picking the right stager for that house, Dee from Venice native. She did a really, really good job. So tell us about that process. I mean, because we had already bought this house here in Hancock Park, so it was a little bit easier for you to move out. Right, and let Ever do his thing. But tell us about the process and trusting me with that.
I think the staging is the most interesting because really stagers do some things that functionally make no sense, like layering rugs on top of each other, or the way in which they arrange the blankets, but they create lines that draw it in and create the illusion of space, and also create these story vignettes in which people can imagine themselves living there.
That's a good word, story vignettes, because that's what we're doing. when I'm selling a property and I'm putting the photos online, I'm really like a marketing agency, right? How can I get more eyeballs on this house through the photos, through the video, right? So I think that's a good point.
And it was interesting because there was a real dialogue between you and the stager. Initially, for the second bedroom in the main house, you were going to, she was going to put it in as a baby's room. And he said, you know what, actually, let's do a guest room home office. And I thought, oh, wow, this is really interesting because Paul knows exactly the type of buyer that you're going to attract. And really, he was right, because our house worked very well for one baby, but the second baby came along and we're like, okay, we really need to move. So if I were looking for a house that is just a 2-bedroom house and I already had a child, it wouldn't be a house that I necessarily would look at.
Exactly.
And then the nursery would sort of turn off other buyers. And I also think it was very intelligent how you said, you know what, actually, we're not going to replace the tile in the shower that looks tired. We're actually going to like acid wash it. Then the grout looked completely new. So you saved us a lot of money by sort of these clever hacks, I would call them.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good word
that weren't necessarily tricking the buyer, because the grout was totally functionally fine. It just looked a little sad.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Is I always want to, you know, save my client money. I don't want them to spend more than they have to spend. I want them to spend just enough to get top dollar, right? And today's buyer, and it's any buyer, right? They don't want to do work to a house. Most buyers don't, right? Because they don't have the capital, the time, or, you know, they just don't want to do it, right? So a buyer is going to pay more for a house that is completely done and ready to move into. So, you know, putting in new floors, putting in new kitchen cabinets or stuff like that's really expensive. There's no need, right? You can put rugs to really, because your wood floors have been there for
100 years.
100 years. Yeah. And there was a lot of scratches on those wood floors, right? We could have said, you know what, let's put in new wood floors. That would have cost you, you know, $20,000.
And also, too, to look at, we decided also not to replace the kitchen cabinets. And the buyer, whom I actually stayed close with because of you, he's planning on redoing the floors in the kitchen anyway. So you were successfully able to ascertain, okay, what's going to attract him? The white Mediterranean backyard oasis and the front entertaining area, the flow of the space. But then you correctly thought, okay, well, our future buyer is going to do a much more extensive remodel. So we are not going to spend the money that they're going to end up ripping out anyway and view it as an asset. So we put it on the market. We got 8 offers, 10 offers.
We got a lot of offers,
You got a bidding war where we were able to get $200,000 or something over ask.
Yeah, for sure.
And you had really, really well attended houses. You and your team, to your credit, showed it all the time. And that also, I think, was a real asset to not be living in the house. So that's something that I would really recommend to sellers, is
if
that,
they can, for
especially with children, because you have to have the house
looking perfect.
And also, too, I remember your colleagues saying that some people say, hey, some agents, hey, can you open the house in 30 minutes? So if you're living in the house, that is something that I would really recommend, is just stage it properly and then let the agents do their thing. By at that point, we just trusted you in the whole process, and even when we chose the buyers, it was really, really good for you to really think through. Okay,
really important.
This person has this much money is one thing, but this person loves the house, because we wanted to make sure that the deal went through. So we ended up choosing the right buyer who loves the house. And we were confident that the sale was going to go through because the person loved the house so much.
I think that's really important to note, right? Especially when you're in a multiple offer, situation. It's not always the case, right? But for your house, there was a lot of great buyers, but there was one buyer that really stood out, that really loved the house. I remember he came to both open houses, and he was there for an hour each open house, and he's a real estate agent, so he really knows how to convince the agent that he's the right buyer, because what could happen And what has happened in the past is that you pick the wrong buyer, even if that buyer's at a higher price, and then they end up backing out for whatever reason, then you lose all that momentum.
Right.
It's important to have that momentum. We also had a couple of backup offers in case this buyer didn't perform, and we ended up closing, and we got a huge price for your house.
And there was one in the first round. It was a developer, and you had realized that they had made a lot of offers and had pulled out of a lot because they're just sort of testing the market.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was just from the the water cooler talk in your office.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think that that's also important, is that just this sort of like community knowledge that like really good firms such as yours has, and the relationships with other real estate agents.
Yeah, and your house could have easily been, like if you don't want to do any work and you want it to be an easy, quick sell, we could have sold it to a developer. And they would have built what they built across the street, right? Something like that, like a new construction.
Right.
But you would have made $300,000 less than what you would have made by just waiting an extra 2 months, putting, I think it was like 20, 30 grand, or I think
it was
around
19
there.
grand.
19 grand is what you put, including the staging.
No, that was just the
just the work, right? So around 30 grand you invested into the house to get an extra, $200,000, which paid for my commission, which paid for the work, and a little extra.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also too, we wouldn't have attracted the buyer that actually loves the house, because I think that the photos just wouldn't have been dramatic enough.
And like you said, photos really drive the traffic into the house. And we had a huge turnout in the open house. I think we had in the first weekend on Saturday and Sunday, we had probably 150 people to the house.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that we were so surprised at, because this was COVID before the COVID market had really taken off.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was, and that's also another thing of getting the word out there. You had a website, you had the Instagram walking through tours, like you really generated interest.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's really important, to just get people right out the gate to see the house.
For sure. Well, thanks for watching. Thank you, Helen, for trusting me in the process of selling your house and helping you buy this house as well. And thanks for sitting here with me.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Helen at our beautiful home in Hancock Park. If you have any questions about working with us, if you want to reach out to us, feel free to email me directly, paul@paulsalazargroup.com, or you can call me directly at 310-387-1976, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.